The alarm clock's harsh buzz pierced the darkness at 4:30 a.m., but Miguel's eyes were already open. He'd been lying awake for the past 10 minutes, watching the red numbers slowly tick closer to the moment his day would begin. Not because he couldn't. Sleep exhaustion had become his constant companion, but because these quiet moments before dawn were the only time he had to think about her. Sophia, his little girl with the bright eyes and the voice of an angel. Miguel slipped out of bed carefully, making sure not to wake Maria, his wife who worked the evening shift at the hospital. Their schedules were opposite puzzles, pieces that barely fit together anymore, but it was the only way they could keep someone home with Sophia and still pay the bills. Well, most of the bills. The coffee maker gurgled to life as Miguel pulled on his work clothes. First job, construction. 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. His hands, already rough and calloused, would spend 8 hours gripping concrete and steel, building other people's dreams. But tonight, like every night, he would think about Sophia's dream. It had started 3 years ago, when she was only 7. Maria had been folding laundry while Sophia played nearby, humming a melody that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her soul. When Maria looked up, Sophia was conducting an invisible orchestra, her small hands moving with surprising grace and precision. "Mommy, when I grow up, I want to make music for the whole world to hear," Sophia had announced with the kind of certainty that only children possess. That night, Miguel had watched YouTube videos on his cracked phone screen, learning about music schools and violin lessons. The numbers had made his chest tight. A decent violin cost more than their monthly rent. Private lessons were $50 an hour. The music academy downtown that could nurture Sophia's gift. The tuition was more than he made in 3 months. But when he'd seen Sophia's face light up at the sound of a violin on the television, something had shifted inside him. This wasn't just a child's whim. This was a calling. Now, as Miguel grabbed his thermos and headed for the door, he could hear the faint sound of Sophia practicing on the quarter-size violin he'd finally managed to buy her used. With a crack in the finish, but it held its tune. She woke up every morning at 5 a.m. to practice before school, just like he'd taught her. Dreams require discipline, Mia, he'd told her, and sacrifice. The construction site was already bustling when Miguel arrived. His foreman, Joe, had learned to count on him, never late, never complained, always willing to take on extra hours. What Joe didn't know was that Miguel had already been calculating. If he worked through lunch, he could make an extra $50 this week. Every dollar went into the old coffee can he kept hidden in the closet, labeled Sophia's future in his careful handwriting. At 2 p.m., Miguel's body screamed for rest, but there was no time. Job number 2, delivery driver for a local restaurant, 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. The tips were unpredictable, but sometimes he got lucky. Last week, a businessman had tipped him $30 for a $15 order. Miguel had sat in his car afterward and cried not from sadness, but from the overwhelming weight of hope. The restaurant uniform was always slightly too small and smelled like grease no matter how many times Maria washed it, but Miguel wore it with pride because it meant he was $8 an hour closer to Sophia's dream. Between deliveries, he would call home. "How was school, Mia?" he would ask, and Sophia would tell him about her day, about the music teacher who said she had remarkable natural ability, about the school concert where she'd gotten to play a solo. Her voice carried such joy that Miguel sometimes had to pull over, overwhelmed by the love he felt for this little girl who was worth every blister, every aching muscle, every moment of bone-deep exhaustion. At 9 p.m., Miguel would head to job number 3, overnight janitor at the office building downtown. 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. The pay was decent, and the work was quiet, giving him time to think and plan. He'd mapped out a 5-year timeline. By the time Sophia was 15, he would have saved enough for a good violin and regular lessons. By 18, if she still wanted it, he could send her to the music academy. The office building was usually empty, except for a few late-working professionals. Miguel had learned to work around them quietly, efficiently. One night, a woman working late had noticed him humming while he cleaned. "That's beautiful," she'd said. "Did you write that?" "No, señora," Miguel had replied. Embarrassed. It's something my daughter plays. She's a musician. She must be very talented. She is, Miguel had said, unable to hide the pride in his voice. She's going to play for the whole world someday. The woman had smiled, but Miguel had seen something in her eyes, pity, maybe, or doubt. It had stung, but it had also fueled him. Let them doubt. He knew what Sofia could become with the right opportunities. At 3 a.m., Miguel would finally head home, his body running on fumes and determination. But before he slept, he would always peek into Sofia's room. Sometimes she was awake, practicing silently with her bow moving over the strings she'd learned to finger without making sound, so she wouldn't wake the neighbors. "Papi," she would whisper, "I learned something new today." And she would show him, her small fingers finding notes that seemed to unlock something beautiful in the universe. In those moments, Miguel forgot about the exhaustion, the sore back, the constant worry about money. This was why he worked 3 jobs. This was why he hadn't bought new shoes in 2 years. Why he ate bologna sandwiches for lunch every day. Why he hadn't been to a doctor, even though his shoulder had been bothering him for months. On Sofia's 10th birthday, Miguel had managed to save enough for a surprise. A real lesson with Mrs. Chen, the violin teacher at the music academy. It was just one lesson, but it was a start. He would never forget the look on Sofia's face when Mrs. Chen had played a piece by Bach, her fingers dancing across the strings with impossible grace. Sofia had watched with the kind of reverence most people reserve for miracles. She has exceptional natural ability, Mrs. Chen had told Miguel and Maria afterward. With proper training, she could be extraordinary. The words had hit Miguel like electricity. Extraordinary. His daughter, his little girl, who woke up at 5 a.m. to practice on a cracked violin in their small apartment, was extraordinary. That night, Miguel had updated his calculations. If he could, pick up weekend shifts at the construction site. If he could work a few more hours at the restaurant. If he could take on extra office buildings to clean. Maybe he could afford lessons twice a month instead of saving for years. The next morning, Miguel had asked his foreman about weekend work. He'd asked his restaurant manager about holiday shifts. He'd inquired about cleaning additional buildings. Miguel, Joe had said, "You already work more hours than anybody else. When do you sleep?" But Miguel had just smiled. "I sleep when my daughter's dreams are secure." Now, 6 months later, Sofia was taking lessons every other week. The improvement was remarkable. Even Miguel's untrained ear could hear the difference. Her confidence had grown, her technique had improved, and most importantly, the joy in her playing had deepened into something that could only be described as passion. The coffee can in the closet was fuller now, but Miguel's dream had grown too. He'd learned about summer music camps, about competitions, about scholarships for talented young musicians. The path forward was becoming clearer, even if it was still steep. Some mornings, when the alarm went off at 4:30 a.m., Miguel's body would protest. His friends from the old neighborhood would ask him why he was killing himself, why he didn't just let Sofia find a more practical dream. But then he would remember the way Sofia's face lit up when she played, the way her whole body seemed to come alive with the music. He would remember Mrs. Chen's words. Extraordinary. He would remember Sofia's quiet declaration, "I want to make music for the whole world to hear." And Miguel would get up, make his coffee, and head out into the pre-dawn darkness, carrying his daughter's dream on his shoulders like the most precious burden in the world. Because this was what love looked like. Not grand gestures or perfect moments, but the quiet, relentless dedication of a father who believed in his child's potential more than he believed in his own limitations. 3 jobs, 6 hours of sleep, and a heart full of hope. That was the price of a dream, and Miguel paid it gladly. Every blister was worth it. Every ache was worth it. Every moment of exhaustion was worth it. Because someday, when Sofia stood on a stage with a symphony orchestra, when her music filled a concert hall and moved people to tears, Miguel would be in the audience. And he would remember these early morning hours, these years of sacrifice, these countless small choices that had built the foundation for something beautiful. He would remember, and he would smile, knowing that love had won. His little girl with the bright eyes and the voice of an angel was going to play for the whole world to hear, and it would all have been worth it.